Thank you for joining us here on the National Communications Network. My name is Shaquan Gill, and we are here to discuss Budget 2024. Now, Budget 2024 is totaled at some $1.146 trillion and is themed Staying the Course, Building Prosperity for All. To share his thoughts with me on Budget 2024, I have Dr. Vishnu Doerga, who is the chairman of Action Invest Caribbean Inc. Dr. Doerga, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure being here.
Now, Budget 2024, as I mentioned in the beginning, it has been read. We're in the debate season, and in just a few days, we'll see the consideration of estimates and expenditures. But in terms of, from a business perspective, how do you see Budget 2024 impacting, improving positively our business sector here in Guyana?
Well, as a business coach, which is my primary role these days, I think it is one that has caused a mind shift as well.
Yeah.
Because before the reading of the budget, I think a week before I actually posted, the definition of what the trillion is, and trillion is a 1 with 12 zeros. Now that it has been announced, I think it's really allowing us in Guyana to think about the pace at which our economy is growing, the scale at which it's growing. The last budget was, around $600 billion. To now get into a budget that is $1 trillion worth, every sector now getting a lot more investment into those specific sectors. I think that will really allow people to see that there's a very clear path towards their own career if they're employed, or their own business in Guyana. And I think that mind shift, that we're in an economy that is rapidly expanding, that there's room for everyone, I think that is a really good impact, that the announcement, and now of course as we hear about what the initiatives are in detail and they're being debated, I think all of us as Guyanese have keen attention so that we can educate ourselves as well. Oh, yes, they said so many hundred billions in this particular area, but I know which neighborhood, I know which region,
right.
I know exactly which bridge, I know exactly which road. Am I in that business? Am I going to be living down that street? I know what's coming down the pipeline. So I think for all those reasons, it's causing us as Guyanese to reflect where we were and what the potential is in the near and longer term future as well.
Yeah. Dr. Doerga, I'm sure you agree with me that education is extremely important. And we've seen in this budget significant allocations towards ensuring we have a well-trained and highly educated people. Do you think these investments in ensuring we have a well-trained workforce will, of course, propel the growth expectation of our country and push us in the right direction?
Well, you're correct that I will agree with you. I am biased towards education. Education has unlocked a lot of growth in my own life and those that we work with. And if we think back to where Guyana has come from, Guyana was never short on resources. We've had agriculture, gold, diamonds, bauxite, almost every single resource you can think of, except us having discovered oil and gas. Now that has also happened. So, if there was a checklist of resources, there would probably be very little that we do not have.
Yeah.
And the added advantage, and in some cases disadvantage, is our very small population. In a way, it is good that we have a small population because there are people who we have to take care of with these resources. It's also a disadvantage. We don't have enough people to do the work that is necessary. And with such a limited population, I think the last few places that this development has happened are countries in Africa. And if you think about Kenya, Nigeria, those kind of countries, there's populations of 90 million and 200 million. And discoveries very similar to ours have made very little impact to the masses because there are just so many people.
Yeah.
So having a small population is an advantage in that way. This budget, I'm sure, will impact each and every Guyanese, as past budgets have done as well. But we're now in a position where we do need to understand that in order to really benefit from these investments, because yes, we can say there's a contract for a road, there's a contract for a bridge, but who's going to build it if we don't develop ourselves as engineers, as accountants, as all the other fields that are necessary to execute this work to the standard that is required by this country? Because the worst thing that you would want to happen is to build a road or build a bridge or invest some money where you don't get a result. In a year it's gone, in 2 years it's gone. And that responsibility does not just lie with the government. I think the government is doing what it needs to do. They've collected the revenue, both what we're already expecting from taxation from our population and taxation and other revenues that are flowing in to Guyana as an income. And I can think about the Natural Resources Fund. That's actually one of the biggest areas where money will be flowing into our country. So they know what is coming in, what's expected to come in. They've done their job through consultations and the like and projections to say, okay, where should we put this money? We can see as well that some things that, of course, through inflation and the high demand that exists now, some projects are costing more than they would have 5-10 years ago.
Right.
That's logical. But we don't want the project to cost us more and we don't get the quality we expect. And where is that quality coming from? The government in many cases is not paying itself to do the job. These are contracts that are going out to local and international companies, and that's where training comes in. I love that we have a very large block of the budget going towards education, both in the public sector, but also through programs like GOAL that allow Guyanese to access training from other entities. And I want people to take this very, very seriously. When you apply for one of these scholarships, do not behave as you're getting this for free. In the budget, you can see, I believe it's, if it's correct,
around $4 billion for GOAL.
For GOAL,
yeah.
4 billion for GOAL. Understand that that is the money that is being paid for your education. So it's not free, it's not a walk in the park, it's not, well, you'll see if you'll do it or you're not going to do it. Imagine that you really wanted that education, and if you had to find the money to get it done for yourself, how hard would you work at it? Behave in that way and make sure that you take this investment into your own education as something that you will not just do to get a piece of paper, but you actually gain the knowledge, skill, and ability that will allow you to do better for yourself, first of all, because you cannot do better for your family and your community and your country if you don't do better for yourself individually first.
Indeed. So
you must up-level yourself, you must upskill yourself to be able to deliver the value that's needed. The advantage we have in Guyana as well, unlike 5-10 years ago, is that we now have a high demand for labor, specifically skilled labor. You know what has happened in Guyana when it comes to brain drain, pre-2015, pre-2020 even, and even up to today. There's still university graduates that at the first opportunity, they still leave Guyana because, hey, I'm an engineer now, I can get a job for $50,000, $100,000 US in a more developed country. So it is still happening. I'm seeing that there's signs of it slowing down. But we've lost so much talent. And we need to now identify where is the demand in Guyana, and these type of discussions, this career guidance needs to start really happening at a very wide scale at the primary and secondary school level, because we can't stay in this age where parents, especially in rural communities, and I do come from a rural community, where parents are still telling their kids become a doctor or a lawyer. Gone are the days 30 years ago where there were so few doctors and lawyers that if they opened a private practice, everybody had no choice but to flock to them, and that generated those people a lot of wealth. So in the rural communities, other than the business people, it was the doctors and the lawyers who were the most successful because of the limited amount of doctors and lawyers.
Right.
We can't continue with that mindset. We have produced hundreds and hundreds of doctors and lawyers in the past 10 years. So the supply has gone up. It's now much easier to get access to a doctor or a lawyer, and in some cases you can actually access them at no cost. So is that, we have to be very careful that we're not ending up producing skills in places where we have an oversupply. We need to take a look at where's the demand, what could my son or daughter, or what could I be adding as a skill that will allow me to really earn at the highest possible level. And all of us are blessed differently. Some of us intellectually, some of us physically, some of us by the place we live or the family, all of us in some way. We need to do an inventory of that to understand, okay, based on my condition, based on my own potential, what do I need to add so that at the outcome, at the output of that, I can now earn sufficient to take care of myself, my family, my community, my country, because again, if we as a people don't take responsibility for our own development, regardless of what the government does, we're not going to make the progress that we could have been making.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if we had 100 million people in Guyana, I would not have to say any of this. 1% alone of that 100 million people could have pushed things up. 1% of 800,000 people is 8,000 people. 8,000 people alone cannot move this country to where it needs to go. So I do want to emphasize again, these investments in education, we need our population to make full use of this. And especially for those of us who are working, because unemployment also continues to drop,
Mm-hmm.
which means that educational institutions and the users of those educational institutions have to cater for the work that has to happen. So we may need to do more courses either early in the morning, late at evening, on the weekends. And the good thing with this is that it's for a limited time. It might be a year, 2 years, 4 years, but then you're now at a different level where you can add a lot more value.
Yeah. Let's turn our attention a little bit to the business community. Now, Budget 2024 and the crafting of Budget 2024 was generally the government's responsibility. But now, when we look at the figures being allocated to the different sectors, clearly, like you mentioned earlier, there are a slew of opportunities for contractors of all kinds. What kind of approach would you say a business entity now has to take in order to take full advantage of the opportunities that are now presented to them?
Very good. So for the past couple of years, I've seen two approaches taken by the business community. And I'll start with the more common one first. The more common one first is that for almost every business in Guyana, there's higher demand than what there previously was. Which means that many businesses are trying to serve this new demand with the existing resources. So they're getting more orders for a particular product. They're keeping the same people. They're not upskilling them, making them work harder. They're looking at how they can stretch and stretch and stretch to meet that demand without making significant investments into adding more capacity so they can grow at some level of ease, and instead of growing incrementally 5, 10, 20%, that they actually grow exponentially, double, triple, fivefold, tenfold. So this is the more common approach. 80% of the time, that's what I see happening. What I would encourage businesses to do is to really take stock of where they are, take a look at the budget, get the full budget document, understand where your sector is, and look at the projects that are coming out, look at the income levels that have gone up, pensions have gone up, NIS payments have gone up. If you're in the medical field, okay, good. If cervical cancer screening is going to become something that more people will have access to, and that is in my field, have I considered, do I have experts do I have additional technicians, do I have the stock, do I have, instead of 2 rooms for screening, can I build 4 rooms for screening? That is the type of analysis that needs to be done to figure out, well, where exactly is this opportunity? And then don't wait for returns on investments you have ever made, because it seems to be also common where people keep complaining about this not happening, that not happening.
Yeah.
And when I ask them, okay, and what's the investment you made? You didn't make an investment. It's like not planting the seed and waiting for fruit to reap fruit. And we have to get rid of that type of attitude. So other than analyzing, first of all, deciding the investments that need to be made, and I would encourage most companies to either set up a research and development department, or a strategic planning department, or a business development department, but some part of the organization whose job it is to think about the environment, to think about strategies, to implement new strategies, measure what's happening, take corrective action, because that's not happening in most organizations at the moment, and they're losing so much value because that's not happening. And it doesn't need to be, in the beginning, a full department. It doesn't even need to be a full-time person. You could say, well, on every Friday, we'll take from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and the couple of managers that we'll have, we sit in this room and we can't talk about the day-to-day. We have to talk about the bigger picture, we have to talk about what's happening, what are we seeing in the rest of the world, and we have to come up at the end of 3 o'clock, we must have 2 or 3 strategies that we can now implement over the rest of the week. And it could start as simple as that. Right? So I think that's some of the very practical things that businesses in Guyana can start doing to really make full use of a budget that is providing enough fuel for the growth.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna, get ready, the machine needs to be grown to a size that we can consume that fuel, or else we'll be sitting with fuel that might have to be moved forward to next year, and that's not ideal for anyone.
Yeah, Dr. Doerga, as we wrap up our conversation for today, I want you to speak in all of your professional capacities at this moment as an entrepreneur, as an educator, as an engineer, and even as a workforce development coach. What is your overall thought on Budget 2024 and how you see it growing Guyana in all of the sectors?
So overall, I think that the budget is well on track in terms of providing the opportunities that Guyanese need, both employees and businesses. I believe that we do need mechanisms, and I come from a technology background, so I do believe that we will need to improve on our mechanisms of monitoring the impact of the budget. We need to look at how do we get continuous input throughout the year, and I belong to almost every single private sector organization in Guyana as well. So I do see the consultation that takes place with the government and the private sector, which happens usually more towards the last quarter of the year. But I think there is room for us to employ more technology, maybe a portal at the Ministry of Finance, for example, that allows for continuous proposals to be made, suggestions to be made. I believe that we also need to get to a place where we actually come up with really well-researched proposals with all the scenarios that could happen. I think sometimes we end up in a place where we express our opinions, and an academic, and you're an academic, you know that you can't do that, because where is the justification? How did you get to that place? So I think between the citizens of the country, the private sector, the government, we do need to look at more technological ways where we can filter out, okay, what is really working, what's not. I really wish that 100% of everything that is proposed will work perfectly. That would be fantastic, and that would happen in a perfect world.
Yeah.
We don't live in a perfect world. So if we don't carefully measure what is and what is not working and correct in a timely manner, there will be wastage. And none of us would want our resources to be wasted, because a big inflow that we're receiving is coming from a non-renewable resource. When that is finished, it's finished. So it's not as if we will be able to recover from any wastage. And that should make it so important for each one of us to keep our eyes on that. Is every dollar being invested well? So I think we're on track. We expect these budgets to keep getting bigger and bigger as we'll have the 4th FPSO arriving late this year or early next year. That will again add more volume. So we need to be really good investors. Right? When I went to school on this subject, when I got taught this subject, it is you're either a saver, investor, or a spender. The good thing is we have a natural resources fund that caters for some saving, which is very important for the future generations, because technically me and you will be consuming the oil that they could have been benefiting from. Right? So we do need to save to make sure that they're taken care of. Investing means we need to put some of this money where it lasts, where we can get long-term benefit from it. So proper roads that can last 20, 30, 50, 100 years, bridges that can go 50 to 100 years, so that we can get a return over a long time. And then, of course, there will be spending. And spending is generally, okay, we need to pay this thing now because it's a need that we have now. Can we get long-term benefit from it, medium-term benefit? Fantastic. If we can do that, we actually convert it to an investment. But if we can't, it's spending, which we still need to be very logical and efficient with, right? So that we can really, again, we come from a country that we've had to stretch for so long. I would say don't lose that ability to stretch. And I remember going to UG and having to live on a loaf of pack of bread, sliced bread, sliced bread for 3 days in a row just to stretch it. Let us not also forget those days. I don't know if you ever had to stretch anything.
Yeah, no, I am. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
But the key thing is, let us not end up wasting. Right? Let us not, oh wait, the bread is there, well, I'll take 2 slices and dump the rest.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy, and many countries have made that mistake, only to then, in a couple of years, couple of decades, wish for the bread that was wasted years ago.
Thorough. Dr. Doerga, I want to thank you so much. 2 minutes with us discussing and sharing your thoughts on Budget 2024. Thank you so much.
It's well invested.
Thank you so much.
Our PPPC government took office in 2020, and insufficient number of persons were trained in ICT via coding camps and ICT trainers in selected communities. From 2020 to date, over 3,200 persons have been trained in communities across Guyana through several ICT training programs, including community-level basic ICT training, innovation camps, Train the Trainers, Guyanese Girls Code, and training for persons who are blind. Mr. Speaker, in 2024, the I&I unit will be training a further 1,500